Welcome to part 4 of this series on working with CIPO's trademark XML data. I showed this slide in part 3 of this series. The demo that I am about to do involves the pieces within the dashed rectangle. In the green rectangle at the top, we have a multi-dimensional data warehouse, which I've built using Microsoft SQL Server. I've also built an XML shredder, which has extracted the information I'm interested in from CIPO's trademark XML data and loaded it into the data warehouse. In the blue rectangle at the bottom, we have something I've labeled SQL queries to indicate that it queries the data warehouse to get information. However, the blue rectangle represents more than just querying. It's a full-fledged user input and results presentation interface, as you'll soon see. I built this part using Microsoft Access. The SQL Server data warehouse is the so-called back end. The Microsoft Access part is referred to as the front end. This is a very common setup. Here we're looking at my Microsoft Access front end. This is running under Windows 10 on my desktop PC. My SQL Server backend is running under Windows Server on a virtual machine on my local area network. I'm using a large monitor. From time to time, I'll zoom the presentation to give you a better look at what's going on. Zooming in and out can get a bit clunky though, so please bear with me. As I go through this demo, notice that the user does not need to know anything about CIPO's XML data, or XML shredding, or data warehouses, or Microsoft Access, or SQL Server. I've kept all of that hidden so the user can stay focused on Canadian trademarks. This form is called a switchboard. You scan the list of forms and reports and click on one that interests you. Before I do that, notice at the top of the switchboard we see how current the data stored in the SQL Server backend is. At the time I'm recording this video, the data is fully up to date and I'm in sync with CIPO. How do I know that I'm in sync with CIPO? Well, here you can see that I've opened the main web page for CIPO's online database. Notice it says the database was last updated on March 31st, 2020. Now that is 1 day later than the date you see at the top of my switchboard. CIPO releases its weekly updates a few minutes after midnight on Tuesday of each week. March 31st of 2020 fell on a Tuesday, so that's the date on which that CIPO provides on its online database webpage, as you see here. However, the actual data is current as of the previous day, which is March 30th of 2020, and that's the date that I prefer to use. Now I'll do a search on CIPO's database that I know will return the total number of trademark records in CIPO's database. I'll just put in the wildcard and look at application numbers, click search, and here you can see results found 1,698,955. That's the same number that you see at the top of my switchboard. Well, actually it's not. My number is one less than CIPO's number. Why is that? It's because CIPO sent out a notice a couple of weeks ago to the effect that a certain application was published in error and should be deleted. So I deleted it from my system. But CIPO did not delete it from their system. So CIPO's trademark count exceeds my count by 1. It turns out that CIPO has different teams looking after the data on the one hand and the database on the other. They're not always in sync with one another, especially during the current COVID-19 outbreak, which is certainly understandable. The bottom line is that I am satisfied that my data warehouse is in sync with CIPO. Let's start with the first switchboard item, National Representative, that is, agent, by province and city. The idea here is that you want to see what marks a particular agent is handling. Right away, you'll realize that this is not something that you can get via CIPO's online database, because that database does not expose the agent details for searching purposes. But the agent details are in the XML data, so I've put them in my data warehouse. First, I need to choose a province. So let's try Nova Scotia. Then I need to pick a city. Notice when I click the city drop-down, I see only cities located within Nova Scotia. You might think, wait a minute, why are we only seeing Dartmouth and Halifax? There are lots of other cities in Nova Scotia. Why don't we see those other cities? The answer is because those other cities are not in CIPO's XML data. Specifically, the only agents having offices in Nova Scotia are located in the 2 cities that you see here, Dartmouth and Halifax. If an agent were to open an office in, say, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, and then file an application identifying the agent's office address as Lunenburg, CIPO would then publish an XML file for that application with the agent's Lunenburg office address. The Lunenburg details would then get loaded into my data warehouse, and Lunenburg would thereafter appear in this list. For now, let's choose Halifax. Once I do that, I get a list of Halifax-based agents with their registration numbers. That's also straight out of CIPO's XML data. And in the right column, I can see how many marks each agent is handling. These are all of the currently active marks for each of these agents. Now watch what happens when I uncheck this box. Now we see the totals for each agent, including inactive marks handled by each agent, abandoned applications, expunged registrations, and so on. I'll go back to the currently active marks only. To get further details for any of these agents, I can just double-click one of them. So let's try McInnes Cooper. Double-clicking brings up a data sheet for the agent showing for each mark handled by that agent the application serial number, the agent's file number, the trademark owner, the current status of the mark class, the application filing date, the registration date, if any, and the expiry date. All of this comes straight out of CIPO's XML data. I'll just expand the data sheet a bit so that you can get a better look at it. And of course, the same thing works for any of the other Halifax agents that you see here, or you can go back and pick some other province and city combination. But let's try something else. I'll close this form. Let's try the next item, which is mark class by owner nationality. Now at first, you might not even know what mark class means, but you can just try it to see what you get. So once I've clicked that mark class drop-down, well, now I get it. I can see that these listed things, certification mark, denomination, distinguishing guise, etc., are what is meant by mark class. Now, this is not me arbitrarily deciding what mark class means. That term comes straight out of CIPO's XML data. I'll pick geographical indications, and here they are. Right away, you can see that there are currently 841 active geographical indications. That's the total at the bottom. And we have a convenient breakdown by owner nationality here. Again, I can double-click any of these. So let's try Portugal. And here we have a data sheet showing all of the geographical indications owned by entities in Portugal. Of course, I can expand any of these columns. Let's do that in order to get a better look at the information. Let's go back to the switchboard and try this marks by mark type report. Again, you might not be exactly sure what mark type means, but when I click the mark type drop-down, you get it, because the so-called mark types are all listed. Again, these come straight out of CIPO's XML data. I'll choose position, and here they are, all of the position marks. Now, watch what happens when I double-click any of them. We've got one at the bottom here that's registered, so I'll double-click that one. My browser opens to the CIPO Online database entry for that particular position mark. And you can see here it is, and it is a position mark. And if you recall the owner details, etc., from the previous screen, this is that particular position mark. I know that what you would really like to see is these two agent docket reports. So let's have a look at those. They sound pretty interesting. I'll try the first one, which is called Agent Docket Report, No Deadlines. Again, I choose an agent here by drilling down through province, then city. Let's try Manitoba, then Winnipeg. Once I do that, I get a list of Winnipeg-based agents, and in the right column I can see how many currently active marks each agent is handling. Then I just double-click an agent, and up pops a docket report. So try Pit Blado. The trademarks listed in the report are hyperlinked to CIPO's online database, so you can just click any trademark to open your browser to the online database entry for that mark. I'll just go through a few pages of this report so that you can get an idea of what it looks like. We see the owner at the top of this page with that owner's marks listed in the report. Let's go back to the switchboard. And this time I'll try the other one, the agent docket report with 1-month deadlines. Let's try Ontario this time. Then Ottawa. There might be a few agents in Ottawa. Yes, here they are. I'll just scroll down a bit so that you can understand this. You may be thinking, some of the firms that I see listed here have additional offices in cities other than Ottawa. Is this focusing only on those firms' Ottawa offices? Well, the answer is yes. CIPO's XML data lets you separately focus on any office of any firm. So, again, I can just double-click on any agent. Let's try Casson McLean here. And here we have the docket report for that firm. This lists only currently active marks handled by this firm, which have deadlines coming up within 1 month from today's date. Of course, today means the date on which I run this report. Everything that you see in this report comes straight out of CIPO's Trademark XML data, including, of course, the agent's file numbers, which you see on the report. And I'll just click through a few pages to give you an idea. I could keep going, but I want to keep this short, and in any case, I think you've seen enough to understand that there are lots of ways in which you can extract useful information from CIPO's richly detailed Trademark XML data. In part 5 of this series, I'll demonstrate an OLAP cube for deriving business intelligence from the data warehouse. Feel free to email me if you have questions or comments.